There is one part of your body that cannot repair itself. Not slowly, not badly, not at all. Break a bone and it knits back together. Cut your skin and it seals over. Damage your liver and it regrows. But chip the enamel on a tooth and that damage is permanent. It is still there the day you die. Enamel has no living cells inside it, no blood supply, and no way to rebuild. It is the hardest substance your body makes, and it is the only one that is finished the moment it forms. Now imagine that tooth starts to rot, and there is no dentist anywhere on Earth. That was every human being alive for the first 300,000 years of our species. And if you have heard that ancient humans had perfect teeth, that cavities arrived with farming, that the toothbrush is a modern fix for a modern problem, then I need to take you to a cave in Morocco.
It is called Taforalt, and it sits in the hills above the Mediterranean coast. Around 15,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers buried their dead there. In 2014, an archaeologist named Louise Humphrey published what she found in their mouths. Of the 52 adults she examined, all but 3 had cavities. More than half of the teeth she looked at were decayed. Some of the jaws carried abscesses. Some had lost teeth entirely while the person was still walking around. These people were not farmers. Agriculture would not reach this part of North Africa for thousands of years. They hunted, they gathered, and their teeth were rotting out of their heads. The reason was growing in the ground around them. Sweet acorns and pine nuts, harvested in bulk, dried and stored for the lean months. Starchy, sticky food that pressed down into the grooves of a molar and stayed there. The bacteria already living in their mouths did the rest. So the story you have been told is backwards. Farming did not invent tooth decay. It made it worse, and it made it universal. But the rot was already there, thousands of years earlier, in people eating almost exactly the diet the internet keeps telling you to copy.
Which raises the real question. What actually happens to you in the Stone Age when one of those teeth goes bad? It starts quietly, a dark spot on the enamel, no pain, nothing you would notice. Then the decay works through into the dentin underneath, and the dentin is alive. It has thousands of microscopic tubes running through it, and those tubes reach the nerve. Cold water becomes a problem, then chewing becomes a problem. Then it reaches the pulp, and the pulp is the nerve itself. Your body responds the way it responds to any infection. It sends blood and immune cells to fight it, but the pulp sits sealed inside a chamber of solid tooth with nowhere to swell and no way to drain. The pressure builds against the nerve with no release. That is why toothache is the particular kind of pain it is. Not a wound you can favor or hold still or protect. A throb with no position that eases it. And it does not stay in the tooth. The infection drains down through the root into the jawbone, and the jaw is not sealed. Archaeologists find the evidence constantly, small holes eaten through the outer wall of ancient mandibles where an abscess burrowed its way out and drained. From there, an infection can move into the floor of the mouth, into the neck, and into the blood. A tooth can kill you. That is not a figure of speech. In 17th century London, the city kept weekly records of how everyone in it died. They were called the Bills of Mortality, and a merchant named John Grount spent years reading them. Among the causes listed, alongside plague, fever, and drowning, sits a single word: teeth. In some years, it was among the leading recorded causes of death in the city. That is London, with physicians, in the age of Newton. Now push that back 15,000 years. Decay was not even the only way a tooth failed. Ancient food was full of grit, stone dust from grinding, sand, ash from the fire, and it sanded the chewing surfaces flat over a lifetime. Wear down far enough, and you expose the pulp from above, no bacteria required. Your body has one defense against this. As a tooth wears, it lays down fresh dentin underneath, retreating and sealing the nerve chamber ahead of the damage. A race between the grinding above and the rebuilding below. Most of the time, the tooth wins. Sometimes it loses. So their teeth decayed, their teeth wore through. They had no anesthetic, and the pain could end them. Which means that somewhere in the archaeological record, we should be able to find people trying to do something about it. We can, far earlier than almost anyone expects. In northern Italy, in a rock shelter called Villa Bruna, archaeologists recovered a young man who died around 14,000 years ago. In 2015, a researcher named Gregorio Auxilia put one of his molars under a scanning electron microscope. There was a cavity in it, and inside the cavity were striations, parallel scratches running in one consistent direction, cut by a sharp point of flint. Someone had gone into that tooth and scraped the decay out. No drill, no metal, no concept of bacteria at all, just the observation that the soft black part is the bad part and the correct instinct to get it out of there. 1,000 years later, at a site called Riparo Fredian in Tuscany, they were more ambitious. 2 front teeth, both with cavities, deliberately widened by a stone tool, both showing those same telltale scratches on the inner walls. And packed down into the holes was bitumen, a natural tar, mixed with plant fibers and hair. That is a filling 13,000 years ago. Then, in Pakistan, at a Neolithic farming village called Mehrgar, it starts looking like improvisation and starts looking like a practice. 9,000 years ago, at least 9 people there had holes drilled into their molars, 11 teeth in total. The holes are clean, round, and up to 3.5 millimeters deep. Alfredo Coppa and David Freyer published them in Nature in 2006, and they matched the marks to a tool that village already used every day, a flint-tipped bow drill, the same technology those people use to make beads. 4 of the drilled teeth show decay, several show wear inside the hole itself, which means the person went on chewing on that tooth for years afterward. They survived it. And in a jaw from Slovenia, roughly 6,500 years old, there is a canine with a deep vertical crack running down into the exposed dentin. Federico Bernardini found what had been pressed into it. Beeswax, applied right around the time that person died. Someone was sealing a cracked tooth to keep the air and the cold off the nerve. None of this was painless, but it may not have been unmedicated either. At El Sidron in Spain, Karen Hardy analyzed the hardened plaque still stuck to the teeth of Neanderthals who died 50,000 years ago. Trapped inside it were chemical traces of yarrow and chamomile. Both are bitter. Both are nutritionally useless. There is no reason to chew them for food. Years later, Laura Wyrick examined another individual from the same cave, one with a visible dental abscess in his jaw, and found poplar in his plaque. Poplar bark contains salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin. A Neanderthal with an abscessed tooth chewing the one bark that happens to contain a painkiller. We cannot prove he understood why it helped. We can prove it was in his mouth. And when nothing worked, there was one option left. Take it out. That is written all over the skeletal record too. Jaws with empty sockets that closed over and healed smooth, meaning the tooth came out and the person lived for years afterward. Some of that was decay. Some of it, strikingly, was not. Across Africa, Australia, Japan, and the Americas, in cultures with no contact with one another, healthy front teeth were knocked out on purpose as a mark of adulthood, of mourning, or of belonging to a particular people. Which tells you something strange. Losing a tooth was survivable enough that some people chose it. So why did any of this get worse? In 2013, a team led by Alan Cooper sequenced the bacteria trapped inside ancient dental plaque across thousands of years of human remains. They found that the human mouth used to hold a broad, mixed community of microbes. Farming narrowed it. The Industrial Revolution and the cheap refined sugar and white flour it delivered narrowed it again until a handful of acid-producing species, above all Streptococcus mutans, came to dominate almost every mouth on Earth. Your ancestors did not have better teeth because they were tougher than you. They had a different ecosystem living on them, and we changed it. Which brings it back to where this started. Enamel does not grow back. It never did. That was as true at Taforalt 15,000 years ago as it is in your mouth right now. And it means every human who has ever lived has been spending down something they could not replace. The difference between you and the young man at Villabuna is not the toothbrush, and it is not the fluoride. It is that he had someone willing to go into his tooth with a sliver of flint while he was wide awake, and you have someone who can make it stop hurting first. So the next time you are lying back in that chair dreading it, I would ask you to think about what you are actually afraid of. He would have traded places with you without a second thought.